Lucy, a widow of 58, was used to a quiet routine. That morning, she was sitting in the kitchen, drinking hot coffee and checking her mail. Her hand reached for a white envelope with the bank's logo. Inside were the usual financial reports she received every month. She opened the letter and saw something that made her heart sink. On the page in large letters was written, "Your balance $0." "This is a mistake," she thought. "It can't be. I had savings that my husband and I had been saving all our lives." Lucy put the letter down and grabbed the phone to call the bank. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the operator. "Ms. The Jenkins, all of the funds in your account have been transferred to another facility in the last month. Did you personally initiate these transactions?" the teller asked. Lucy could barely breathe. "I didn't transfer the money. Who did?" After the conversation with the bank, Lucy's mind began to race. She remembered her financial advisor, Peter, the man she had entrusted with all her savings after her husband's death. His convincing words about investments, promises of golden opportunities, and professional appearance made her feel confident. Maybe it's just a bug in the system, and maybe Peter is already fixing it. Lucy tried to reassure herself. She dialed Peter's number. The call took a long time, but there was no answer. She tried again, then a third time. No one answered. Her heart began to clench. Lucy decided to go to Peter's office in person. She quickly put on her coat and took the documents he had given her earlier. When she arrived, she saw a closed door and a sign, "Office closed indefinitely." This was the first alarm. She began to recall how Peter had been avoiding answering her questions in recent months, refusing to provide detailed reports each time. Lucy returned home with a heavy heart. She looked through the papers that Peter had left behind. And a contract she had signed a few years ago caught her eye. The fine print stated that Peter was authorized to act as her financial representative. She felt fear coursing through her body. Was this possible? Could he take advantage of her trust to embezzle her money? Lucy went back to the phone to try to reach Peter again, but this time the number was unavailable. She realized that she had been the victim of a scam. Her eyes filled with tears, but she was determined to find out the truth and get back what was hers. Lucy Jenkins, 58 years old, was a woman who had always been respected for her devotion to her family and her ability to create comfort. Her life seemed perfect until the death of her husband, Henry, 2 years ago. Henry was a reliable support, loving husband and wise counselor. Together they created a business selling antiques, which became their pride and a source of stable income. Lucy has always admired the beauty of antiques. She said, "Everything has a story, just like every person." Henry supported her in this, and their store became a favorite place for locals. After Henry's death, Lucy's life turned upside down. As she lost not only her beloved husband, but also the one who handled her financial affairs. She had always trusted him with money and was never interested in the details of their money management. Her loneliness and fear of the unknown made her seek help. That's when Peter Gray, a financial advisor with an impeccable reputation, came into her life. Peter, 45 years old, had a charming smile and a confident voice that inspired confidence. He struck Lucy as a true professional who could help her with her financial issues. "Ms. Jenkins, I understand how hard it is to lose a loved one. Let me take care of your savings so you can live in peace," he said during their first meeting. Lucy signed a contract with him without reading the fine print. She was confident that Peter would look out for her interests just as Henry had done. Lucy had an adult daughter named Emma, who was always straightforward and not afraid to speak her mind. Emma was skeptical about Peter from the very beginning. "Mom, you've only known this man for a few weeks. Why do you trust him so much?" she asked. "Emma, you don't understand how hard it is to be alone, and he's helping me deal with something I don't know anything about," Lucy replied. trying to defend her choice. Later, Emma noticed strange things. Peter would ask Lucy to sign documents without explaining their contents. He avoided seeing his family and always looked too busy. "Mom, doesn't this seem suspicious to you?" Emma asked. "Emma, you are just too suspicious. People can be kind, and not everyone means you harm," Lucy replied, tired of the constant remarks. Lucy felt comfortable entrusting her finances to Peter. Actually, she began to spend more time her favorite hobbies, such as reading and gardening. But over time, she noticed that her life became less stable. Peter says that my investments will bring a return in a few years," she shared with her friends. "Are you sure it's reliable?" her best friend Martha asked. Lucy brushed these comments aside, convinced that her financial advisor knew what she was doing. After her husband's death, Lucy was left to deal with financial matters she had never handled before. Bills, taxes, investments, it all seemed like a confusing maze to her. One day, while sitting in a local cafe, she overheard a conversation between two women at the next table. Peter Gray helped me get out of a financial hole. He is a true professional," one of them said. Lucy remembered the name and a few days later decided to look up his number online. When Lucy first saw Peter, she was struck by his appearance. Tall, with well-groomed hair and an expensive suit, he exuded confidence and reliability. "Mrs. Jenkins, it's nice to meet you. I heard about your loss. Let me help you bring some peace back into your life," he said, shaking her hand. His voice was calm and friendly, which immediately melted Lucy's anxiety. During their first meeting in his office, Peter went out of his way to make Lucy feel comfortable. "Emma, your husband left behind well-organized assets, but without proper management, they can lose value," he explained, showing her charts and tables. Lucy listened intently, even though she didn't understand half of the terms. Trusted his professionalism. "What do you suggest?" she asked. "Trust me, and I will make sure your money works for you," Peter replied. Peter handed Lucy several documents to sign. "These are standard agreements. I need them so I can represent you," he said. Lucy felt a little nervous, but decided that it was just her distrust of new people. She signed the papers without even reading them. "You made the right choice, Mrs. Jenkins," Peter said with a smile. After the meeting, Lucy shared the news with her daughter Emma. "I found a financial advisor to help me sort everything out," she said. "Mom, you didn't even check his reputation. Do you know how many scammers there are out there?" Emma was indignant. "Emma, he looks trustworthy. He has a lot of clients and great reviews." "You always think the worst," Lucy replied. The conversation ended in a fight, and Lucy decided not to tell her daughter any details about her work with Peter. A few weeks later, Peter told Lucy that he had already made several profitable investments on her behalf. "Your assets are growing, just as I promised," he said during another meeting. Lucy was relieved and proud of her choice, as she even thought that Henry would have been proud of her for taking on such a difficult challenge. Lucy began to notice small details that made her nervous. Peter's phone calls during their meetings became more frequent, and his answers were short and evasive. One day, she noticed that Peter hastily hid some documents when she entered his office. "It's just some reports for another client. Nothing important," he said, smiling. But she was left with an unpleasant taste in her mouth. During one of her visits to the bank, Lucy asked to print out a statement of her assets. The bank manager, looking through the data, suddenly asking, "Ms. Jenkins, do you really want to sell those shares?" "I'm sorry, what shares? I didn't sell anything," she replied in surprise. It's in your portfolio, as per your financial advisor's instructions," the manager replied. Lucy felt her heart sink. She knew nothing about this. Lucy decided to meet with Peter immediately to find out. Why don't I know anything about the stock sale?" she asked bluntly when she walked into his office. "Ms. Jenkins, it was a good move. I saw an opportunity and took advantage of it for your benefit," Peter replied calmly. But they're shares I wanted to keep. You should have asked me." Lucy was indignant. Believe me, I know what I'm doing. You hired me to make decisions for you. he said with a bit of irritation. After the meeting, Lucy shared her doubts with her daughter. I always told you to be careful, Mom. It looks suspicious, Emma said, but I already trusted him. How can I stop it now? She replied, fighting waves of doubt and fear. Emma decided to do some research on Peter. She found several articles that mentioned his name, but one was particularly disturbing. Mom, it says here that his firm was involved in a scandal a few years ago. They were accused of using client funds for personal gain, Emma said. Lucy was shocked. She refused to believe that her financial advisor could be involved in something like this. On Emma's advice, Lucy decided to find one of his previous clients. She met with a man named Michael, who told her story. He promised me mountains of gold, and then I found out that my money went to his personal investments. He's a great manipulator of trust, Michael said. But why hasn't anyone sued him? Asked Lucy. He's very careful and leaves little evidence. But as soon as there's a problem, he just disappears, Michael replied. Back home, Lucy analyzed all the facts. Her suspicions turned into certainty Peter was using her money for his own benefit. His profitable investments turned out to be fraudulent schemes where her money was disappearing without a trace. Lucy decided to act immediately. She couldn't let the situation go, knowing that her future was at stake. She made an appointment with Peter, this time not to discuss the investment, but to demand answers. When she walked into his office, her gaze was cold but confident. We need to talk, and I want to hear the whole truth, she began, sitting down directly across from him. But Peter looked calm, but his eyes were darting nervously. Lucy, I have always acted the best interest of your finances, he began, trying to sound convincing. Come on, Peter. I know about the stock sale and your personal investments. It was my trust, and you took advantage of it. She replied sharply. Peter tried to calm the situation down. You don't understand. It was for your own good. Sometimes risk is necessary to achieve success. These words were the last straw. My good. And it's my money, my life, and I had the right to decide how to use it. And you decided everything for me, and without my permission. Lucy's voice trembled with emotion. All of her hands clenched into fists, and she could barely hold back her tears. I trusted you with everything I've earned over the decades, and you didn't even think it necessary to ask me. Feeling that the situation was getting out of hand, Peter went on the defensive. Lucy, listen. The financial market is unpredictable. I did everything I could to make your assets grow. Yes, there were mistakes, but that's part of the business. Mistakes, she snapped. You call it a mistake that I'm now almost broke. His excuses only added fuel to the fire. During the conversation, Lucy forced Peter to admit that some of her money had gone to cover his own debts. I was going through a difficult period, Lucy, but I intended to pay that money back. Adam, it just didn't work out as planned, he admitted. These words finally confirmed her worst fears. You didn't even think about how this would affect me. You took my money like it was your own. After the emotional confrontation with Peter, Lucy decided to dig deeper. Her trust had been shattered, but she didn't know how far his fraud had gone. Then, armed with the documents she managed to get from her lawyer, she began to find out the details. Her friend Joan, a former financial analyst, agreed to help. Together they reviewed the reports and noticed something strange, several large transactions to unknown accounts. Lucy, this looks like a classic money laundering scheme, Joan said, holding the documents in her hands. Lucy gathered all her resolve and went to one of the banks through which the transactions were made. With the help of a lawyer, she gained access to additional information. We discovered that some of your funds were transferred to offshore accounts. The bank manager explained. In whose name are these accounts? Lucy insisted. The answer stunned her. One of the accounts was registered in Peter's name, but the other belonged to someone she hadn't expected to see. This is impossible, Lucy whispered when she saw her late husband's name. It turned out that Peter, in collusion with others, had used old documents to create fictitious accounts in her husband's name. Not only did this allow him to cover his tracks, but it also made it appear that some of the money was invested in dubious companies. He was using my husband's memory to steal. Lucy exclaimed, clenching her fists. The discovery made her remember when Peter first appeared in her life. He always praised her husband, saying that he was his mentor. How could I have been so blind? She whispered to herself. Lucy felt her despair give way to anger. She could no longer afford to be a victim. Lucy decided to act quickly. Together with her lawyer and Joan, she prepared the materials to file a lawsuit. But before that, she wanted to meet with Peter again to hear his explanation. The meeting took place in his office. Peter, I know everything. And I know that you did not act alone, she said, throwing copies of the documents on the table. His face turned pale. It's not what you think, he began, but Lucy interrupted him. No, it is exactly what I think. You betrayed me, used the memory of my husband, and stole everything I had. Backed into a corner, Peter admitted that he was only part of a larger scheme, and he was forced to act on the orders of powerful people who owned controlling stakes in the companies where he invested Lucy's money. They would have destroyed me if I didn't agree. I tried to make things right, but it was too late, he justified. You had a choice, Peter, but you chose to betray me, Lucy replied. Lucy was sitting on the veranda of her house, watching the sun go down. Mishy in her hands, she held a photograph of her late husband. You would have been proud of me, John, she said aloud, addressing him. Her life had changed forever. She had gone through pain, betrayal, and disappointment, but now she felt she was able to turn over a new leaf. Lucy received an offer from her lawyer. She could pursue legal action against Peter and the other conspirators to get her money back. But that meant years of hard work, expenses, and a constant reminder of the betrayal. Was it worth my while? She asked herself. The answer was not obvious. I want to get what's mine back, but do I want to live in the past? She was torn by her thoughts. Her friend John came over that evening with a bottle of wine. You need to think about what's more important to you, Joan said as she poured her a glass. Lucy sighed. I think my future is more important. These words sounded like she was voicing her true desire for the first time. The next day, Lucy made a decision. She handed over her legal files to her lawyer, giving him permission to proceed, but she decided not to get involved in the process herself. I don't want it to consume me, she said as she signed the documents. Her goal now was different, to find a new meaning in life. Lucy started attending financial literacy courses to better understand how the world of money works. She also joined a local community of people who had been affected by fraud. I'm not alone, she realized as she listened to the stories of others. Her experience became a valuable lesson she could share. One day she met Peter by chance on the street. He looked exhausted, as if his own machinations had ruined his life. Lucy, he began, but she interrupted him. Don't. I won't let you influence me anymore, she said calmly. And her words sounded like a final point. Lucy decided to sell her house and move to another city where she could start from scratch. It's not an escape, it's a new beginning, she explained to Joan. Before she left a note in her old homing. The past teaches us, but it shouldn't hold us back. I am ready to move on. What does the future hold for Lucy? Will she find new happiness? It remains a mystery. Your feedback, subscription, and support are always welcome.